Now to make our tangerine wine, we will be using the following. I've got 5 pounds of tangerines. We'll be using 1 lemon, which is going to act as our acid blend substitute. We'll be using 1 black tea bag, which is acting as our tannin substitute. Tannin, of course, is what gives your wine a little bit of astringency or mouthfeel at the back end. We will be using a handful of raisins. Doesn't have to be an exact amount, just a good handful of raisins will do. This time around, I'm going to be using a Red Star Premier Blanc wine yeast because of its higher alcoholic tolerance. But again, if you don't have it, use whatever you've got. We will be using regular bread yeast, which is going to act as our homemade yeast nutrient. We'll be using 2.5 to 3 cups of plain granulated sugar. We'll need at least 1 straining bag. We'll be using up to 1 gallon of clean filtered water. We'll need a fermenter to do primary fermentation in, something with a wide mouth opening so we can get our straining bags in and out. We will need a 1 gallon or 4 liter carboy jug, demijohn, take your pick, that we're going to transfer our wine to be after about a week's worth of primary fermentation into. It wouldn't hurt to have at least 2 of these available so that over the course of the several months that this project will take, you'll have something to rack periodically from one container into the other. Although the primary fermenter does have its own built-in airlock, you will need an airlock with bung that will fit inside your secondary carboy. That is, if you're not familiar, to help the CO2 gases escape and keep the bugs from getting in. I'll be using a juicer this time around to help us extract the juice from our tangerines. And although it's not absolutely essential, it's a good item to have on hand, and that would be a hydrometer with testing tube. And using your food grade sanitizer of choice, whether it's One Step, Star San, or something else, we want to make sure that all of our equipment has been properly cleaned and sanitized before we use them. And that is what I'm going to be using to make this wine. Now then, one of the first things we need to do, apart from taking off any remaining stickers and labels that might be on our fruit, is we want to go ahead and give our fruit a rinse. Because we are going to be zesting this fruit, we want to try and wash off a little bit of that pesticide that might still be on there. Now then, after drying off your fruit, using the zester of choice, we'll go ahead and start the process of zesting our tangerines. You know the drill. If you don't, as little of the white pith as possible. And it's now time to do the lemon. All right, that having been done, we're going to go ahead and get our zest and our raisins, which I had thought about simply doing a rough chop on, but this time around, I think I'm just going to put them in the bag. In fact, having said that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and put them in the bag. And add in our zest. Getting as much in the bag as possible. And go ahead and tying that off. And move on to the next step. Now the next thing I want to do is go ahead and juice these tangerines. Let's go ahead and slice one open. Okay, lots and lots of juice, but lots and lots of seeds. That's fine. Lots and lots of seeds. I got a whole lot. Getting as much of our wine to be out of each half of tangerine. Really is a lot of seeds though. Okay. But you get a fair amount of juice. Moving on to the next one. We can now go ahead and do the same thing with our lemon. Ended up at, I would say, 4 1/4 to 4 1/2 cups of juice. And yeah, that ended up over 1,000 milliliters. So yeah, I can make the corresponding adjustment in reducing the amount of water we're going to add later on to make up the difference of our juice. Okay, I poured off about half of our gallon of water because we don't need as much. And we have to make room for our juice and our sugar. So I'm just going to pour a little bit, well, I don't know, about half a cup-ish or so in a small saucepan. And the remainder we can go ahead and pour in a pot. And we want to bring that up to a boil. Now the reason why we're boiling our water to start is because we want to kill off any stray wild yeast that might have been clinging onto the side of the fruit that now have made its way into our juice. The reason why we have the small saucepan of water is because we're going to add our teabag and our bread yeast to make our yeast nutrient. All right, we'll start by taking 1/4 teaspoon of our bread yeast. Go ahead and add that to the small pot and drop in our teabag. And let's bring that up to a simmer. Of course, it takes forever for a pot to come to a boil unless you put a cover on it. Let's go ahead and put a lid on and wait for that to get hot. Now that our water has come to a nice good boil, we're going to go ahead and drop in our zest and raisins. And go ahead and, nope, I think I'll do that one next. Go ahead and add our tannin mixture. And the reason, of course, why we're boiling the yeast is that we want the yeast to be dead. And that is what's acting again as a yeast nutrient for our wine yeast that we'll be adding later on. So now we can just go ahead and pour in our juice. Since our mixture is still hot, now would be a good time actually to add in our 2 1/2 cups of sugar. We can, of course, make an adjustment later on, adding more sugar if we want something with a slightly higher hydrometer reading. Go ahead and incorporate that in. Doesn't take long. And now we can put our lid on and let that come down to room temperature. Let's go ahead and take that initial hydrometer reading. Now, of course, the purpose of the initial hydrometer reading is to help us to determine, A, if we needed to add more sugar, but more importantly, it helps us to determine how much alcohol is going to be produced in the final product. We take our initial gravity reading at the start, and then at the end of fermentation, we take another hydrometer reading, and by calculating the two numbers, we end up with the alcohol by volume, or in other words, how much alcohol we've produced in our wine. Okay, now for this part of the operation, we need to transfer our juice into our primary freshly sanitized fermenter. Do this as quickly as possible. Make sure your hands are properly cleaned and if sanitized as possible, do that as well. Transfer your zest and raisin mixture in there. And this is always a tricky part because I'm doing it reverse of how I normally do it, and I'm reaching around the tripod as well to get this done. All right, one of my better efforts. It's always helpful to do this over the sink. And for the time being, let's go ahead and put our cap on. And move on to the next step. Now, to begin the actual process of turning our juice into wine, we need to add our yeast. And as for me, as generally always, I'll use 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. I don't really need to bloom it, but if that's what you prefer to do, please feel free. Try not to just dump it in there, kind of spread it around a little bit. Put your cap back on. And before I move on to the next step, I should point out that this particular fermenter does have a built-in airlock. If yours does not, you will need to put one in and make sure that any CO2 gases that are going to be pretty vigorously trying to escape will have a means to do so. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is we need to label our creation. We are making a tangerine wine. Our starting gravity was 1.074, and we started it on this date, 10/11/2022. Now, once a day, if possible, for the next 3 days, you might want to go in with a sanitized spoon and give your musk a generous stir, a vigorous stir, to incorporate a little bit more oxygen into the mix to help the yeast out initially. After that 3-day period, you kind of not want to do that. That's when you might start causing problems by adding additional oxygen to the mix. So yeah, 3 days, give it a good stir. After that, leave it alone. After a total of 5 days, anywhere 5 to 7 days, depending on how you feel about it, and then go ahead and transfer it into your secondary carboy. And that's a process called racking. And for the most part, you're just trying to get it off any dead yeast that might have accumulated on the bottom, which is what you're going to be doing periodically over the next several months. After about 12 months, you can go ahead and begin enjoying your wine. By that time, I would have, usually within that 10 to 11 month period, I would have gone and degassed it if necessary, back sweetened it to my own personal taste, because generally this wine is going to go dry, which means that there's not going to be any sugar left in it at all. So you can back sweeten by adding additional sugar to your taste. Problem with that is that by adding additional sugar, you are going to more than likely restart fermentation, which is something you really don't want to do. So in order to stop that from occurring, since this channel does not use wine stabilizers on the back end or sulfites generally, I rely on a process of pasteurization, and I do have a video for that, and you can check on the link above. So, therefore, if you like what you see here, please click on that subscribe and notify button. All the equipment and tools that you see me use here, you can find links to those in the Amazon section, in the comment and description section of this video. And until then, I will see you in the next video. All right, it's now been 12 months since we started making this wine, end of our last video. And I can say that it's been a pretty interesting 12 months. Some good. And I don't know a lot of bad, but nonetheless, I made it through it, and I'm ready for another one. Okay, what do we have here? We have Tangerine wine, born 10/11/2022. ABV came in at 11.03%. It basically went dry. When I looked at the numbers, when I took my hydrometer reading, it came in at 0.990. It's been back sweetened. Final gravity for that back sweetened number was 1.032 for anybody who's interested. And I can say it's been pasteurized. Color, of course, is slight haze. I'm not too concerned about that anymore. Unlike when I first started making wine and I was drinking it after, say, 3-4 weeks, basically it's not but cloudy haze of yeast floating around in there. Proud of myself that I've made wine. These days I know better. Let's get right into this one. Wish I could find my waiter's key corkscrew. But this one works, and it's all that matters. Okay. There we go. Good enough. All right, let's go ahead and pour that. Now, a couple of other things about this thing, I should say off the bat. It was bottled and back sweetened and pasteurized. I did all that last week, so it's been sitting in a bottle for a week. Hopefully enough time for a bottle shock to have worn off. But here we go. Something I can't do when I'm doing the back sweetening is I can't pour a full glass and marvel at it, sniff it, don't get the alcohol content registered in your nose and all of that, because I don't pour that much to be able to determine any of that. It's just basically small 3-ounce Dixie cups and just barely enough to cover the bottom of the Dixie cup to determine if it's sweet enough or not. So I'll just say that up front. Profile shot. Tangerine wine. There's a reason why tangerines start with the first 4 letters T-A-N-G, tang, because it's definitely present. That's what makes tangerine different from an orange or any other kind of citrus fruit. It's definitely got that tang to it. And it definitely comes through it as wine. There's a very sharp tang. You can taste those tangerines in there. I like many of the wines that I make where the flavor of whatever fruit, vegetable, root, flower, weed that you use to make your wine. Sometimes it's really not pronounced. And it's kind of like hidden way in the background in terms of being able to get that taste of it. But there are some wines, like this one, where you definitely know you're drinking tangerine wine. All in all, if you inhale deeply enough, you can detect the alcohol, but it's not pronounced. It's not prevalent. But that tanginess is rather sharp. If I had to make any suggestions or changes in the recipe, I'll have to go back and look at the original video. I probably would not use lemon as the acid-blend substitute. I don't think it needs it. I don't think it needed it anyway. Usually that's just to bring up the pH level. And I use it just to bring up the pH level, just to be on the safe side that you don't get any issues like botulism or anything else occurring in your wine. It basically just keeps it safe. I think at 1 year, this wine probably could use some additional aging, another 6 months to another year, perhaps. Definitely it's drinkable now. This will get drunk tonight with dinner. Yeah, that would be my recommendations. I'll go through the original when I repost this video. In the description section, if there was lemon added in the original video, I will probably modify that to suggest it's not necessary. that and probably additional 6 months to 12 months aging. And this will be just fine as a tangerine wine. Right now, I'm in the process of remaking some of the earlier wines that I did that I really liked and told myself that I was going to make again whenever I got the chance. I think I'll add this one to the list of wines that I'm definitely going to make again. I think it's worthy of that. There's some wines that I know I'm not going to be making again. A few that come to mind would be that Tej. I don't think I'll ever make another watermelon wine. The rice wine was so bad that I actually pulled the videos from public view. That's how bad that one was. Don't know if I'll try the Tapachi again. That one ended up as a disaster. But yeah, there are a few that I will never make again. But this is not on that list. This is one of the ones that, yeah, I will end up making again. I've got 4 bottles left. Give one to my son when they come down here for Christmas. Can't take it on the plane when I fly up to Detroit this weekend, so that's out. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yep, cut down on the tang factor just a little bit. Either that, I could have used more water in the very beginning to weaken it a little bit. First time making these wines, you really don't know how they're going to turn out, which is why I make the 1 gallon batches so I can figure out, okay, is this one that I want to make it again? And if I do make it again, what changes could I make? Which is like all part of the hobby. So yeah, with this one, again, Elephant lemon was necessary, and I might increase the yield slightly. But other than that, no, this is perfectly fine. That being said, that's my take on Tangerine wine. If you'd like to see here, click on that subscribe button, click on that notify button so you know when I'm making new videos. Become a member. They'll pay for this stuff because, it ain't cheap. Or become a Patreon where you're just basically just donating to the cause. Help this channel out. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next video.